So why did he need a black director? Could a white director not have
It's not
produced this
color,
work?
it's culture.
Explain the difference, because I think we're in a
Steven
space right now.
Spielberg did Schindler's List.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Scorsese did Goodfellas, right? Steven Spielberg could direct Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese probably could have done a good job with Schindler's List, but they're cultural differences. You know, I know, you know, we all know what it is when a hot comb hits your hair on a Sunday morning, what it smells like.
Huh?
That's a cultural difference, not just a color difference.
All right.
So it's the culture.
Do you know about a hot comb scenario?
No, she don't know
She's
about no
looking
hot
at me.
comb.
Because that's
You
that's
don't know.
old
You
school.
don't know nothing about.
Dax.
See how everybody laughed? That's a cultural difference. That's not a race difference. That's just that motion. That's all I gotta say, right?
All right.
Okay. All right.
So
The space that we're in, culture
this was
versus
a
race.
clip from Denzel Washington, and he was talking about the difference and the distinguishment between color and culture in terms of like racism and things. And I really like this clip because when it comes to artwork, as artists and illustrators, we can literally capture moments like these that he was explaining in our artwork and our images. So in this series, the Capture the Culture Illustrated Masterclass, I'll be showing you guys how to draw images that that can reference and capture different moments and parts in life that explains culture, as well as I'll be showing you different approaches and strategies that you can use in your artwork that'll make it stand out and more empowering to the viewers who's watching your artwork. So in this first image, this is a art piece. This is an image that I drew that was inspired by the Denzel Washington's video clip that we just saw on YouTube. It's an illustration of a boy and a girl. On the left side is the girl who's getting her hair combed or done by her mom. And on the right side is the image of a young boy who's getting his hair cut and is at the barber shop. And both of these image captures cultural moments. So today I'm just going to walk you through the way I drew the image and sketched it out. So first, this is going to be a digital image too, but the same skills apply if you're using you know, pen and paper, pencil and paper, or if you're using a digital app as well. The app that I'm using is Procreate, but it can also be done on Photoshop, or if, you know, any platform, these skills can be transferable. So what I like to do is start with a light colored pencil. Right now I'm gonna use a blue color. And what that does is it allows you to sketch out the image in a rough form, but at the same time you get to flesh out the details and details that you want to add in the future. So if you're not using a digital iPad or a tablet, you can do the same thing on your sketchbook. Start with a blue color pencil, and you just want to sketch out a rough draft of what the image will look like. All right, so if I can grab my pencil. So we usually start with like the head, and I kind of do what is called a gesture drawings. Gesture drawings are usually always used with artists and painters to kind of get the proportions of the subjects that they want to draw. So it's very rough, and it doesn't have to be all the way detailed. It's really just capturing the shapes of what's going on in the scene, and a lot of times it's used for like composition as well. So in this image, we're capturing a picture of On the first image, we're capturing a picture of a mom who's braiding her little girl's hair. Or cultural wise, it's an image of a young black girl getting her hair done and braided, and she have to sit there. So it's like capturing that moment in time that that people can relate to, especially if you're a girl or a young woman. Like you can always go back to those moments in times where you had to sit down in a chair and get your hair done. Maybe it was flat irons or things like that. So I'm gonna just up the opacity a little bit so you can see how I'm going along and just catching mainly the main lines that we're going to use for the picture that we're going to go in and add like more defined inking styles to. So you want to get the eyes, and we know that she's going to have like puffy hair right here. So images like these are it looks challenging starting off, but once you get like a method down to approaching every image, then it gets a little easier and you have more liberty to like make mistakes, or there's really no such thing as mistakes, but you have the liberty to kind of adjust and rearrange things as you go. So it ended up looking something like this, very kind of all over the place and sketched out, but it gives you enough blueprint to where when you want to go in and do your details, you can. So now that we have this part, if this is a regular sheet of paper that you're working on, what I usually do is I'll like take my eraser and kind of erase some of it to where it's not too, like the blue lines aren't too dominant. But if you have a digital app, you don't have to do that. You would just lower your opacity of the sketch drawing. And that's when you kind of go in and start working on your original drawing. So I'm going to create a completely new drawing. I'm going to take this one away and show you guys how it would work from this image if I was using it. So on another sheet of paper or on the same one, you would go in and grab your ink or your pen of choice. A lot of times I really like using micro pens when I'm drawing in my sketch pad or a digital app. Either a micro pen, or another favorite of mine is like brush pens, the ones that have ink, the ones that pretty much have ink cartridges in it, and you can just use the ink part of it. So now we have this rough outline. It's always good to work from a picture reference. Right now, my picture reference is this image right here. So we're going to drag it to the front and we're going to put it to the side as a picture reference. So let's see. I'm going to shrink this down and I'm probably put it on this side. So now, if you're working at home on your sketchbook, you want to either have a picture reference on your phone or on your computer, or if you have a picture reference from a book, that's always good to have close by so that you can capture small details and things that you probably can't see in the sketch itself. So let's see. Now we're going to start doing the outline. And all the time I usually approach the drawings So this is the outline, but it can also be a second layer for your rough drawing if you need it to be. So you don't necessarily have to get um, this can be a rough drawing on top of your blue layer, and then you can go in and do the same thing again where you make this one transparent, and you go in and do another more defined layer on top of this one. And that's usually the thing with artwork, especially if you're into painting or illustrations. A lot of times it's all about layering, how you layer your drawings, whether it's layers of color or paint, or if you're doing illustrations, it's usually like layers of, I guess, layers of gesture drawings. And I'm always looking at proportions. The way I do proportions is I know that the eye and the eyes and the ears on our faces usually line up. So if it was a face, let's say off to the side, we know that it's a T shape. With using that T shape, we understand that the ears and the eyes usually line up right below the T. And then from there, the nose kind of starts right under where the ear marks are, or where the ears end. And then the mouth goes under that. So while I'm drawing this image, I'm making those mental marks like this one to show me that that's where the eye is going to go and things like that. Let me see if I can move the reference to where it's in the. Oh, all right, let's start this over. We're just going to move the reference picture to where it's in the easier spots to work with. Maybe on this side. And let's see, for those who are following along, so we want to put that about right there. Okay, that's better. So we want to work on the right layer for those who are working on a digital app. And from here, let's just capture what's going on in a more defined drawing. So I kind of like using more defined lines, like illustrated lines, because I do a lot more children books and things like that. So I've learned over time that it's best to try to capture your lines in one stroke. So a lot of times, as I'm looking at the picture reference, I'm looking back and forward, and I'm trying to see if I can catch the line in one stroke. I know a lot of artists who kind of sketch their lines out like this, and they try to, get the gist of it by squinching their eyes, and that works as well if you're going to be going in and kind of defining the lines. But what I found that works best for me is, especially once I've created that background image illustration, it makes it way cleaner and crisp when you're able to try to capture the lines in one path. So And I also got a background in doing tattoos and like a lot of illustrative work. So, especially with tattoos, it's all kind of based on capturing lines and things. So, that's one strategy that you can practice. Sometimes, every line is not going to be done in one path. And that's fine because you can always go in and erase and sharpen the lines and get them exactly how you want to. Uh, but you definitely want to your stay true to your sketch, your gesture drawing that you put down ahead of time, and you just want to use your lines as a way to capture expression, because expression can be shown in more than just the faces. The way expression can be shown in her fingers, the way her fingers are like gripping the hair. Expression can be shown in like the collar. Like expression just is a byproduct of of the confidence and how you draw each line that you create. So the lines itself is a form of expression. Alrighty. So as I'm going along, I'm just following along with the rough sketch that I did, while at the same time I'm taking out some negative spaces or taking out some spaces and drawing in some spaces. And with this one, we're going to have like a border. And a good rule of thumb when you're illustrating, especially when you're doing paintings, is that you always want to start from the back, which is the mom is standing behind the daughter. Work your way from the back to the front. And what that does is it allow you to, it's almost like if you're looking at the skies, like the skies are in the back of everything. And then in front of the skies, you have your land, whether it's trees or houses and things like that. You always want to start with your backgrounds and then work your way up to the closest thing in front of you. So with this, I just start with like the sketch of the mom, and I kind of work my way up to the daughter. So we have her shoulders here. And see, I go back and forth with doing like solid drawn out lines, and some of my lines are more sketch like. So I guess I have a kind of mix between the two. So let's see, you want to capture under her neck. We have a jawbone here. And as usually when I'm mapping out the face, I like to start with basic shapes. So her head is pretty much like an oval. And once I get the oval down, then I kind of like a sculpture, I just kind of go in and sculpt out different parts. So we know that her mouth, her lip is kind of right there. But the basic oval shape kind of gives me a guideline on where I'll be doing the face. So we know her eyes would be right here. So that means we kind of have to adjust the ear. Like we said earlier, the ears kind of start right under or at the same space where the eyes are. So that first ear was a little bit too high. So we want to bring it down. And then let's see, the eyes are like right under the line. And then the bridge of the nose. So we're going to use the line as like the eyebrow line, where the eyebrows are. And then once you kind of have that down, you can go in and erase the guidelines and just start building off of what you already have. So the nose is about right here, usually. So in this first drawing, the main exercise that we're working on is capturing the moment. And what that means is in each moment, like this is a moment in time where the girl is patiently sitting here, getting her hair done, and it's a relatable moment, like opposed to someone just sitting there looking at the camera or like a staged image. This image is more like in the moment instead of staged. And usually when you're making artwork and composing your images, those type of images are the ones that over time I've learned have the biggest impact and the most emotional reactions out of, opposed to like an image of someone's just looking right at the camera. Like if you're able to capture moments, it adds to the story of the question of the image, because you want to know like, well, what is going on? All right, so some of the facial features you just got to go in and sharpen as you go. Like, all right, so we want to do her hairline. We know, so there's like little parts in between. And with the hair more loose and expressive with it, like I know the different textures of hair that they're not all just straight lines. So some of it is curvy, some of it is curly. So I just kind of go in, and I like doing this because it adds a different type of texture to the illustration outside of just the straight lines and things. Then you want to capture the edges. I know that's one thing about like women and young girls is they say the edges got to be on fleek. So it's like thinking of those small things and giving consideration to the small things like that. It's also how you're making yourself conscious of capturing the culture and adding those type of elements that you can identify with as an individual. You know, it's dope to include those things in your artwork, and I think people notice those things in certain artworks too, because they're more relatable. And when people find things that they can relate to in your artwork, it just draws them to you as an artist. And that's what we all want. So now we kind of got the gist of it down. Now it's just going in, and I call this part like the sculpting aspect. And sculpting is just kind of going in and erasing and adding lines and erasing like a push and pull until you get more so the expressions that you want. And the sculpting part is also a way if for those who do a lot more sketching than straight lines, like you can use this sculpting part as a way to redefine the image that you're creating. Okay, we've got to give her her top. All right. So now that you have that done, I think I kind of made her head uh, a little lopsided. So for those who are using digital apps, you can adjust and reshape, resize, move around, and fix the small errors that you have. That's the cool part. For those who are doing drawings or using pen and paper, you can do the same thing, except your tools are your eraser. And or at the same time, your tools can be your eraser, or you can just go in and add another blank page on top of your illustration and just start drawing the illustration over again. So right now, I'm like, I think I got her chin a little bit too. Let's see what's going on. I think I made her chin stand out too much. So I kind of want to tuck her chin in. And your pictures doesn't always have to look exactly like the pictures that you're referencing. Like when I first started drawing, and I'm the same way too. I was a perfectionist, and I had to make the pictures look exactly like what I was drawing. If it didn't look like what I was drawing or the picture I was referencing, I would get frustrated, and I'll keep trying until I get it perfect. But over time, as I got into more like the production side of drawing, illustrating, I realized it's not really about making the picture look exactly like what you're referencing. More so, it's about being able to capture a character. This whole process is really character design. So as long as we're able to capture the expressions in her face, you can see the moment that's happening. For me, I'm satisfied with that. As long as I can capture the character, opposed to making it look exactly like the picture reference. And especially also too, because when you're working from picture references that you find online, you may have, for instance, you may have a character of a white kid or a Hispanic or a different race of person, and you might have the perfect picture reference, but you want to change the race of that person or their ethnicity. That way, you can take images and capture the pose and reference the pose that you're drawing from, but instead of making it exactly like the image you're drawing, there are certain features and things that you can change to make it look more like the culture that you're trying to capture or the ethnicity, or even if it's a boy, if this picture was a picture of a boy and I wanted to make it a girl, I could do that because I'm mainly using the picture reference as a tool to capture the pose and what I'm drawing. Me as the artist, I get to define who I'm drawing because I'm the creator of the character itself. Boom. So once we get this black sketch down, you can remove your background layer and you can just really go in and add the details that you want to see. So like I'm sharpening up, well, not sharpening, but like I'm gonna add her pocket right here. I think I want a few of the mom's braids to overlap her shirt. Alrighty. So now from this face, we got two of the main steps down. So one, you start off with a gesture drawing, which is a rough, quick sketch drawing of whatever picture you're referencing. I would say it is okay to trace. A lot of people think that they're breaking the law or they're, cheating in drawing if they trace an image, but that is not true. I get images all the time that I print from online, or I have them on my computer and I trace them directly from the computer. That is not against the law, and it's okay, and it is acceptable, and it's actually a good practice because over time it helps you put proportions and things into perspective, into place, to where the more you trace, the better you'll get with learning how to draw things on your own. However, it is a good balance to be able to know how to not trace exactly from the image. Like, it's good to trace to get your gesture drawings and your first layers. But what I like to do after I get my first background layer down, I like to use those gesture drawings along with my creative freedom to capture the rest of the image. So now that we have this down, we have our illustrations, we have our inking down. The first phase was your rough sketch drawing. After that, you add and apply your ink to the top of it. And then the next phase is coloring. Let's see. So when you're approaching coloring, it's a little different if you're drawing on paper, but if you follow along, the same rules apply, which is you always want to start from the back and work your way up to the front. So on here, I'm gonna make another layer. If you're drawing on paper, you can't make another layer, but you just want to start with your background, like coloring in your background. So right here, I want to make a sky blue background. And from there, I just want to kind of grab the colors that I see from the original image and block them in. So what I'm doing, you can't see it right now because the inking phase, but the ink is on the top, but I'm drawing in the shape of the face and the colors that I want to block in. So right now I want to block in the color of the mom's head. And I know I'm going to be using like a brown. So I go in with the brown color and just kind of map out the part that I want to fill in. So you're looking at the ink phase right now, but this is what I just did. And then I make that a solid color. I fill that whole color in. So now we have the mom with the brown face. And I just do that same thing throughout the image. So I want to make her hand brown. And I like to do this before I get into the, then from here we'll get into the highlights and shadows. But before you get to the highlights and shadows, you just want to have a solid understanding of what colors is going to be what. So in this image, we have her shirt has a blue. I think we're going to change. I want to change the color of the shirt to maybe, let's see, we'll give her an orange, like a burnt orange shirt instead of blue. So I'm going in and I'm blocking out the color, blocking out the colors of her, where the shirt will be. And we're just filling it in. And I'm using for those who's wondering, I'm using the iPad Procreate app. And this app allows you to drop and fill the color in automatically, almost like Photoshop, the bucket tool. So you may not see me like coloring it in like this, but you can do the same thing. If you were drawing on paper and illustration, the same rule apply. Like I would block this entire, block this entire like shape of her arm. I'll just color it in one solid color. I draw the same way. So when I'm doing coloring in my illustrations and paintings, like I make things one solid colors, and then I go in and add like the shading. So for the girl, we're going to make her have on the pink and white striped shirt. Let me see. And let's see. So yeah, we're going to give her a pink and white striped shirt. Alrighty. Excuse me, I had to pause for a second. All right, so we took a mini break right there, but we're going right back into blocking in the colors and filling in your artwork. So with the girl, we want to give her a pink and white striped shirt. So what I would do, same process, and is fill it in as a solid color, and then just go in and adjust as needed. So this is the same process that animators use. A lot of art directors and art people in studios. Like the more simple you make your coloring process, the easier it is for production teams mainly. So if you're working with a production team who's going to take this image and maybe have to modify it or animate it or do things to it, it's good to have simple color palettes and things that's easy to work with. But also as well, if you're going more of the fine arts route, you can be more expressive and paint in your images as expressive as you want to. So with this one, I'm just going in and correcting little small corners. And let's fill in the girl's face. So same process. Going to let's see. We're going to give her a brown skin tint, brown skin tone. So I'm just blocking out the image, making it a solid color. To where, all right, there we go. There we go. So this is the very base of the illustration. You can go in and sharpen the edges to where they are. You don't want any colors bleeding out. So you can go in and sharpen the images. But for those who are following along on a digital app, this is what the drawing looked like without the outline on top. You see it's just blotches of colors that's been filled in. And a lot of times what I like to do from here is go in and just sharpen out the colors in the pictures that's below it. And what this does, well, for those who's working on paper, you could probably ignore this step, of course, because you don't have layers and things you're working with. But those who are following along on Instagram, not Instagram, but those who are following along on Procreate or even in Photoshop or any type of digital app that you're using, you can do the same method. It can be as simple as the drawing app that comes on your computer. Like, this is an easy thing to do as long as you have multiple layers to work with. And what this does is when you're ready to go in for your detail and your shadows and shading, you're going to be able to capture these colors or grab these colors and just work from them. So let's go into that now. So I want to add the highlights and shadows on, let's start with the shirt. So what I can do is I can select the color of the shirt since it's one solid color. It's all white. And now everything is blocked out except the shirt, meaning I can't draw anything else but the shirt. And from there, that's helpful because now I don't have to worry about like staying within the lines or the drawing going out of the line. I can just work directly onto the shirt and put the pattern in. And it makes it way faster and easier. Alrighty. And also under the same thing, I'm going to add shadows and shading. So I usually like to use a softer brush and I lower the opacity and I change it to black. But from here, as you can see, you can go in and add shadows to different parts of the drawing to make it stand out from the background and to make it more 3D. So that's pretty much what we'll be doing. for, this image right here. So let's see the same thing for the face. Since I have that background color blocked out, I'm able to select it and work with it directly. So sometimes when I'm working on skin tones and things, I don't always like to use just direct black when I'm shading in the colors. Sometimes I just use a darker version of the brown or the color that you're using to get the highlights and shadows. So for here, instead of using black, I'm just going to use a dark brown to kind of capture the shaded parts. So we know that the inside of her ears, let's see, under the nose, you just want to think of like where would all of the shadows drop or cast on this image. And a great way to think of it is, imagine that this was a light bulb that was right here. Imagine that's a light bulb. If that's the light, then the highlights will be right here on the forehead, on the nose, maybe on the top of the lip. It'll cast these highlights that'll show like on the side of the mom's cheek, maybe her nose too. So these will be places where the highlights would be, and the shadows are just opposite of where all the highlights would be. So if this is a highlight up here, then of course the shadow, since the light is not going through the ear, it'll be casted behind the ear, like this little cast behind the nose. And a lot of times, with the cheeks and things, is more of a gradient. So what I like to do is lay down basic colors, and then I go in and blend them together. So we know that the back of her neck, things like this will all kind of have shadows. Now let's add some highlights. Again, I don't want to use I only want to use like all white. So I'll take the same base color of the brown and just make it lighter, so that we're not using like stark white or anything. It can still be seen as a highlight, but it doesn't have to be like stark white. Even with the eyes, sometimes I don't just use solid white. I am right here, but even with the eyes, it doesn't have to always be a solid white. It can be like a grayish color, or a tone like right under the white. So like we said, we want to capture the highlights on her nose. Maybe it's like a highlight right above the eyelid. Her cheekbone is probably a highlight that casts right on her cheek. Things like that. And then you just go in with your blend tool. You can do this if you're using pen and paper. If you're using pen and paper, I just like put the color down and then smudge it a little bit. That gives you the effect. That gives you the smoothing out effect by smudging the colors so that they can blend in. Alrighty. And with this, I'm kind of capturing pretty much just capturing the shapes of the face, like the curves of the cheeks. Like the top lip would probably have no. And you just want to do that for kind of the rest of the image. So now I'm gonna go in and add the shadows like right under arms right here. Shadows behind the arms. Smudge them out. Should make it very simple. And then slight highlights. So rule of thumb is your highlights and shadows will always be opposite of one another. So whatever side your shadow is on, your highlight will be on the opposite side of it. And vice versa. Alrighty. So we're gonna wrap the image up with the mom. Let's define the shading and shadows on the mom. And also on the shirts and things. So we see the shadows like right under her chin bone. Usually the top lip is always a little darker than the bottom one. So I always make the top lip just one solid color. But that's just preference. You can get the exact lip color or you can emphasize however you prefer. A lot of times people have like more pinkish hues of lips. So you can do that. Or you can give her lipstick. Alrighty. So we're just going in and pretty much defining where all the shadows would be. So on his arm over here. And then from here, I just kind of go back and forth. When you're getting closer towards the end, you can start seeing a bigger picture of things. So, you don't have to work just on the arms at all at one time or just on the shirts. Like, you can bounce back and forward as you see, as long as you know what's being filled in and why it's being filled in. So, these backer parts, the back of the collar over here, I'm just making some of these parts darker under the collar right here. Few lines on the shirts. Like you just want to go in and provide all the shading and shadowing. Alrighty. Then I get my blend tool and just and you don't have to blend your artwork. You don't have to blend the colors in together. I don't blend all the time. A lot of times I like having the sharp edge shadow type of graphic style. I know like companies like Grand Theft Auto and things like that. They use, well, not their game, but in the graphics that they use, they don't do a lot of blending. They just use the sharp edge like graphics. So blending is optional. You don't necessarily have to always blend in your highlights and shadows. It's just all based on preference. So we're going to give the mom like the white parts of the eye. So the eyes, adding the white part is pretty much adding life to the picture. It lets the audience know that these humans are alive. So for the skin tone, for the highlights, I'm gonna do the same thing. Just define some of the highlights on the face. So maybe on the lip right here, on the front of the eyelids. And this is real cartoonish, a real cartoonish type of style. But with these same methods and strategies, you can get super realistic as well. It's just based on the preference of detail that you're given to the image. So although this is more on the graphic cartoon side of things, the only thing that makes it more graphic and cartoon is the lines. So without the lines, it looks crazy right now, but this is how an image will be, of course, more sharpened and things like that. But realism is just graphic and artworks without lines. That's all realism is. Graphic work is just artwork with lines and more stylized approaches to fleshing out details. Whereas realism is more focused on highlights and shadows specifically. So it's pretty much highlights and shadows that we're doing now. Except if it was more realistic, we wouldn't be using any sketched outlines or any things like that. It would just be working directly with highlights and shadows. So that's pretty much the only difference from realism and stylized type of images. So if you're able to, master this part of the drawing, or if you're able to master knowing how to place your shadows and highlights down, then you can pretty much get into realism and drawing real images the same way, just with the absence of black lines or any type of lines. Or some artists can even capture realism using line work as well. It's just paying closer attention to details and getting things more precise. So the last part of this illustration will be just the highlights on the shirt. We just want to give her a few highlights on the shirt to show that there's light beaming in. And all right, so now we have an illustration. And if you wanted to, let's say that they are sitting outside. Now now that we have the main characters in the frame, another part of capturing the culture is kind of capturing the environment. And in the future classes and in the next classes, we'll be talking more specifically about environments and how to capture backgrounds and how to set the tones with your backgrounds and things like that. But we're just going to briefly get into it on this one. So let's just say that they are sitting outside on the porch and you're staring. So I'm going to capture this, and I'm not going to do too much with this part, but I'm just going to do a gradient of, from bottom to top. And that way it kind of changes the tone, kind of gives them a sense of sitting outside. If you want to be more descriptive or put more elements that shows that they're outside, maybe there's like uh, maybe there's like a rail right here or something, or like I guess rail is the word. A fence. Well, it's not a fence, just kind of like a metal railing showing it there sitting in front of something. Maybe it got like little designs in it. It doesn't take much. Then, if you want to make it seem like to add even more to the effect, you might want to throw some clouds in the background or something to show the audience that they're sitting outside on the porch on a sunny day while she's getting her hair done. And, so those doesn't have to be too much as long as you're able to capture the setting. Like you don't have to put too much detail in the clouds and the detail in the background, because that's exactly what it is. It's just the background. So a lot of people are not going to be paying as much attention to the background. So now I'm just kind of adding the fluff to the clouds and pushing them back. So with that, now we have an image of a mother and her daughter. This captures the culture. I bet a lot of people can relate to getting their hair done on a Sunday evening outside or something. It tells a story. Like maybe the little girl is getting ready for school or preparing for a weekend or an event or something, and the mom is getting her right. And this is how you capture culture. The key to capturing culture is being able to create moments, being able to put characters into situations and moments that make sense. And yeah, trying to allow yourself to giving yourself a platform to tell the story through the image itself. And then the very last thing you want to do is sign your picture. And put the year. And there you have it. You have captured the culture. If you like this image, stay tuned to the next episodes, because we'll definitely be going over more details and going over more principles on how, if you're an illustrator and artist, we'll be going over core principles that you need to know to make your images more impactful, make them stand out, and capture the eyes of your viewers, all the while teaching how to capture culture and teaching what it is to why it's important to capture cultural moments in your artwork, if that's something that you're interested in. So with that said, I think we're going to wrap up with this, and started with the gesture drawing or a rough outline sketch. Then we went in with the inking phase and adding out your lines and your line work for the ink. And then you go in with blocking in colors, blocking in solid colors. And after you block in your colors, you want to go in with your shading, highlights, and shadows. If you apply all those steps, you should come out with a dope image every time.